There is a photograph from August of 1923. A young woman on the deck of a schooner holding a cat. She is 25 years old. She weighs less than she did 2 years ago, when 5 of them landed on an island north of Siberia. The 4 men with her were hand-picked for the job. She was the seamstress, $50 a month to sew. She had never fired a rifle. She had never built a boat. She had never seen a polar bear anywhere but at a distance, and she was so afraid of them that the men laughed about it. Every one of those men is gone. 3 walked out across the frozen ocean for help and were never seen again. The 4th died in her care of scurvy while she hunted for them both. And then she was alone, the seamstress, for months, at the top of the world, with the cat and a rifle she taught herself to shoot. Everything she did next, she did for a little boy in an orphanage in Nome who was waiting for his mother to come home rich. This photograph is the receipt. She made it. Now here is the part they never tell you. She was not shipwrecked. Every version that calls her a castaway has lost the story. She was hired. There was a wage, and there was a reason she needed it. Her name was Ada Blackjack, Iñupiaq, born east of Nome, near a place called Solomon. Her father died when she was around 8. Her mother sent her and her sister to a Methodist mission school in Nome, where she learned 2 things, English and sewing. Everything that happened to her afterward ran through those 2 skills. She married at about 16, a man named Jack Blackjack. Of 3 children, 1 lived, a boy named Bennett. Her husband beat her and left her. She divorced him and walked roughly 40 miles to Nome, carrying her son. That is the first thing to know about her. When there was no way through Thing, she walked out of it. She kept his name. It is the name the newspapers would print. In Nome, she cleaned houses and sewed for miners. Then Bennett got tuberculosis, and she could not pay for the treatment. So she placed him in a children's home called the Jesse Lee Home, and went back to work to earn him out of it. That is not a mother giving a child away. That is a debt, and she meant to pay it. Now do the arithmetic she was doing. A boy in a children's home with an illness that costs money. A mother in a gold town, sewing and scrubbing a day at a time. A needle was never going to close that gap in time. Then a private expedition came to Nome looking for a seamstress and a cook. She did not apply. The chief of police in Nome heard they were hiring and gave them her name, because she spoke English and because she was an excellent seamstress. The 2 things the mission school gave her, coming due at once. $50 a month. She was 23 years old. She said yes because of the boy. The plan had called for Iñupiaq families, hunters, seamstresses, children, because that is how people actually live up there. Not one signed on. So when the schooner Silver Wave left Nome, the only person aboard who had grown up in the Arctic was the woman they had hired to do the mending. Why Wrangel Island? Uninhabited. Chukchi Sea, north of Siberia. That was the point. Vilhjalmur Stefansson financed it, planned it, and promoted it, to hold the island as a claim for Britain and Canada. Neither government had asked him to. This was a private land grab dressed up as exploration, which is why the leader was a 20-year-old student from Toronto named Alan Crawford. The claim needed a Canadian. With him went Lorne Knight of Oregon, the only one with real Arctic experience. Milton Gall of Texas, 19, a kitten named Vic, and Fred Maurer of Ohio, who had already survived a winter on this island in 1914, when Stefansson's flagship was crushed by the ice and 11 men died there. He went back. They landed. They raised a flag, posted a proclamation, and unloaded about 6 months of food. Not because the money ran out. Stefansson's reputation rested on a thesis he called the Friendly Arctic, the far north as habitable country for anyone who learned to live off it. He had published a book with that title the year they sailed, and discouraged them from taking more. 6 months of food on the strength of a book, and for a year the book was right. They hunted, they built, they photographed everything, the only reason you can see their faces now. Which is why nobody was worried when a ship left Nome the next summer to come and get them. The relief ship was a schooner called the Teddy Bear. She left Nome, hit pack ice in the Russian Arctic, rammed it again, and in late September turned back. Nobody on the island knew that. They only knew what an empty horizon looks like. 5 people, a second winter, rations meant for 6 months. What they ran short of was fresh food. Scurvy is a starvation of vitamin C, and their supplies were canned and dried, which carry none. On an island where nothing grows, the one local source was fresh meat, and the hunting had thinned. That winter, Lorne Knight, the experienced one, got sick. Crawford, Gal, and Maurer walked off the island to get help, roughly 90 miles of frozen Chukchi Sea, toward Siberia. They were never seen again. No bodies, no wreck, no trace. They walked into the ice and out of the record, and anybody who tells you what happened to them is guessing. That left 2 people on the island. One was dying, the other was the seamstress. And she did not wait. She ran the camp. She kept the trap lines. She hunted. She took a rifle she had never fired and taught herself to use it. For about 5 months, she nursed a man who was not getting better. She had scurvy symptoms herself. She hid them from him so that he would not worry. Lorne Knight died. Scurvy, most likely. Remember that phrase, most likely. She could not bury him. The ground was frozen. She built a barricade around his body, wrote it down, and went back to work. Now the number, because nearly every version gets it wrong. 3 true numbers have been mashed into one. 2 years on the island. 8 months as the only person on it who could stand up. 2 months as the only person on it at all, except the cat. She trapped foxes. She hunted birds and seals. She learned to take the blubber off a seal skin. There is a photograph of her doing it. She sewed her own reindeer skin clothing. That part she already knew. It was the job. She built a boat, a skin boat, an Iñupiaq, and a platform, up off the ground so she could see a polar bear before it saw her. A boat is not the equipment of somebody waiting to be rescued. Neither is a watchtower. She was building her way off that island. She never had to use them. A schooner called the Donaldson came over the horizon, the first ship in 2 years. And that is the photograph. Ada on the deck, holding the cat, her fox furs stowed below. She made it. The newspapers called her the female Robinson Crusoe. Crusoe was shipwrecked by accident. Ada Blackjack was hired, underpaid, undersupplied, and left there. Somebody else had already started telling her story. The man who rescued her was Harold Noyce. He came off that island holding the expedition's diaries. He sold his account to a newspaper syndicate. In it, the sole survivor was a woman who had neglected the dying man in her care and might have hastened his death. Now watch what the record does. That is a page from Lorne Knight's diary. Noyce admitted tearing 26 pages out, later restored, and erasing passages. Somebody photographed one and printed it in 1925. It is on your screen. The tampering is not an allegation, it is an object, and Knight's own diary backs her. It records her feeding him food she had hunted and trapped. In October of 1924, Noyce signed an apology, blaming a nervous breakdown. In April of 1925, he signed a second statement and wrote, quote, "I retract the story about Ada Blackjack." So say it exactly. The story about Ada was retracted in writing, twice, and only that story. He never confessed to the rest. The first retraction was negotiated. In exchange for it, Stephenson's book left out certain harsh evidence. That book is the defense brief of the man who organized the expedition, written after 4 people died, and in it, defending himself, he wrote this, quote, "But Ada not only did not hunt for bears, she fled when she saw them. It is probable that but for this defect of training, she could have saved Knight's life." End quote. A few paragraphs on, he allows it is not even clear Knight died of scurvy. The symptoms may point to a kidney disease, in which case, he writes, a polar bear more or less might not have made any difference. Both are in the same book. We will leave them there. She was paid less than promised, plus a few $100s for the fox furs she had trapped herself. Stephenson's book used her diary. She got nothing from it. It was still enough for what she went for. She got Bennett out of the children's home, took him to Seattle, and had him treated. He lived to be 58. That was the contract. She kept it. Now the flag. A Soviet gunboat called the Red October arrested the colony Stephenson sent out to hold the island and pulled the Canadian flag down. Wrangel Island has been Russian ever since. Everything those 5 were sent there to hold was gone within a year of her rescue. Except that Ada Blackjack never went for the flag. She went for her son, and she came back with him. She died in Alaska in 1983, 85 years old. Her marker reads, Heroine, Wrangel Island Expedition. And in 2023, the New York Times ran her obituary, 40 years late, in a series called Overlooked No More. 40 years is a long time to wait. It is shorter than never. The photograph was always there. So is the erasure, printed in the book of the man who made it, where anybody can look at it. That is what a record is for. It does not fix anything. It just outlasts the people who lied to it.